All right, now that we got to see a full tournament coverage from Jomez, let's talk about all the changes that you may have missed. I noticed that about 93% of you are watching but not subscribed, so if you could, please subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. So I think this might have been the biggest year as far as changes go for Jomez. Obviously, look and feel still is about the same. They have the same color scheme and everything, but some things that I noticed were a lot of things got shrunk and very condensed. This could be considered a good thing because you can see more of the coverage. You don't have to be bombarded by all this trivial information that you may not even care about. But I noticed a lot of spots where it looks like they just tried to get it like readable by mice. Like it is so tiny in this intro. I'll show you right now. It is just like basically unreadable on a large TV. So if you're on your phone, you're basically just like squinting and maybe getting a couple words. So definitely there's just a scheme which is very similar to DGN, where they just made everything a lot smaller. And it seems like they did this thing where like, it's very amateur, and I doubt they actually did it, but it looks like it, where you basically just like shrink the image instead of making a new unique element. It looks like they literally just like shrunk it because it has like a little bit of aspect ratio weirdness to it. And I've noticed DGN had that, and it just makes things harder to read. And there was nearly 2 minutes of intro where they had B-roll of players throwing their shots, laced with interviews about pre-round thoughts and potentially useful insight. But a lot of times I just feel like they're going to say the same thing over and over. They're pros. They already have press conferences where they talk about what their plan is. I would ultimately say just cut it. Just make the video shorter. It ultimately, for me, creates a more hype experience. And I think that's what they should be going for. This is going to be a continued narrative for me with this. And that is that the tone of Jomez right now is just far too serious. And they really need to go back to their roots of just casual, fun, friendly, jokey vibes. I think this basically Worlds-esque view of what commentary is just not the right spot. I think if you're looking at live, yeah, be serious, be like totally dialed in. But everyone watching this knows that you know what the final result was. So acting serious and surprised, it's just weird. And I know that like maybe Germ doesn't actually like watch the final result. Like he actually waits till he sees post-produced. But even with that, like he still probably got like some inclination that Calvin won. So like you really have to decide what your tone is, what the target audience is. And I think if you're watching post-produced, you are probably catering to a more casual viewer. And as somebody that watched casually Jomez before I even played a hole of disc golf, I probably watched maybe 10 hours of coverage before I actually bought a disc. So I know how influential that vibe was for me. And I just honestly thought that disc golf was cool. I just loved the vibes and I loved everything about it. But now it's more serious and I don't think it fits. I think it is just misplaced. And I think there really needs to be a tonal shift, because right now it just kind of falls flat for me. And I do think that having Sexton there year round will be great, assuming that that's what happens. I'm not fully sure. Probably something you've missed is in previous Jomez, if you look at the drone footage, it is just very pixelated. It looks like they like did some weird rendering to it, and you could almost not even like see the hole or what it looks like. Now they actually have what looks to be a fully 4K drone capture. I am loving how it looks. It's just great. I don't know why it took so long to make it that way, but it's definitely looking good now. At that same spot, they have a custom hole map, which just looks cool. There's really not too much to say about it. It just looks cool. You can clearly see that there's a lot more integration with the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Obviously, they paid like $250,000 just to do coverage, so it makes sense that there's a lot more representation of the Disc Golf Pro Tour, but it is obviously very noticeable now. And then before we get to the last point, I thought the live check-in was very valuable. There was a lot of changes that you probably don't even know if you watch live because there was just so much going on. But having the recorded record of what scores were, what people were done with holes, like Aderhold finished pretty early, so getting to see that score was good. And all the integrations that they have with UDisc is great, where you get amazing stats. I think it's almost a little too detailed, but still having those stats are great. Certainly a common notion I have before I get to my last point is just that there is a lot of information being shown. And if you're not glued to your screen, then you're going to miss out on a lot of information. Also, you may not even care about that information. So having so much scores, stats, disc names, all that, it really adds for a cluttered viewing experience. And it doesn't necessarily create a casual, hey, I'm going to be on my phone for a little bit. Like you have to be fully dialed in to the coverage to see all the stats and everything. So definitely cleaning that up a little bit, just removing some of that information that people don't actually really care about. would be very good. All right, so last up, it would be scores. This is obviously the biggest change. There was obviously a lot of backlash apparently by the way they did scores previously because they totally redid it. And so they have the current person doing the throw as the only score being shown until somebody throws it into the basket. So this is definitely a cleaner look, but ultimately you lose pretty vital information. Like it is so often that you want to check scores, figure out like, oh, did Kevin get like a bogey 3 holes ago? Or if you're watching Paul coverage, you're like, did he get like 6 birdies in a row? Is he on a 7th? Like just stuff like that where you only want to know at a glance, but you also want to just be able to know the second you look at the screen. You don't want to wait till Paul throws a shot. So I would say this is ultimately a misstep. You could certainly bring up the argument that there's so many players, so we don't actually have to care that much about every single person on this card because there might be people that are chase card or even third card that are battling for the win. So you may not actually care that much about just particularly lead card. I really want to know all of the 9 scores for each player at all times. So not having this information really makes it more difficult and more frustrating to watch coverage. And along with that, obviously the text is tiny again, so it's just annoying and harder to read. I don't think it would take up a lot of space just to widen it a little bit, but also they have the throw count. This is something that I have thought a lot about, and obviously it seems like minutia, like who cares, but if you're trying to make the entire broadcast better, you have to really make these small and weird decisions. I would say they probably are catering to a more noob audience, but you still don't need the throw count. Like seeing Eagle make a par putt on his 3rd throw, like I get it, that's cool, but it's just redundant information that I don't really care about. And it's hard to even read, so it's just like, it's not necessary. Just have the player name, the score, their last 9 hole scores, and their current place. Everything else is just minutia that I don't really think matters. So Brody brought up this point, and I thought it was like kind of dumb, but the more I thought about it, like it does make sense. And that is the notion that the catch cam will actually really throw off your perception of the shot. I did definitely notice this on some of the shots where you see a throw, it's looking great, and then you watch catch cam and you just have no perception of how it's actually being thrown, how the flight's affected by the wind. You're just in a totally different spot where you just don't get the relevance of how close you are to the pin. I think on holes where it's a par 4 or 5 and it's not even able to see where the pin is, obviously that makes sense. But for some of these shorter shots, like hole 1 in particular, going to catch cam should be a much more wider view or just not even included until you get to like a replay. I think Jomez certainly goes for that more cinematic shot, which looks cool. But if you're a viewer, you really don't care about like cinematics. You really just want to see how the disc golf is being played. So it goes along with that notion of being more serious doesn't actually equate to better coverage. I think they really have to refine what it looks like to be post-produced. There's a lot of talks about what Jomez may even become in the future. There's so many variables, who knows? But I think for right now, Jomez should really look for a more chill, laid-back, funny experience. But that's just my take. What do you guys think? Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit longer and a little bit heavy-winded, but thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Wild Runs signing out. Peace.